Hey everybody, so these are the tools you're going to need. I have white acrylic paint and black, paintbrush, water, green clay, white clay. I'm using this kind of copper brown clay, but you can use any brown clay you like, and some red clay. I'm also going to be using these toothpicks, some wire. This is like some really thin 16 gauge wire, and some clear Sculpey liquid clay, needle tool, and also these little balls of red clay are made out to about pinky size and smaller. We're going to make some cute little birdies out of those. And these little window frames you can get at fthsupplies.com. The link to this is in my comments section, or not my comments, but my description. First, I'm going to paint these window frames, and this is very self-explanatory, so I'll just be quiet and let you guys see what I do from here. After I'm done painting both window frames and they are completely dry on my little silicone bowl, I'm going to take 7 inches of my green wire and put one through one window and one through the other, and make sure that it's even, and I'm going to pull this tight here. And then I'm going to make a little twist and then feed it through one window frame and take it and put it through the other window frame. Just tuck it through just like that. And then I'm going to take the 2 pieces of wire and I'm going to hold them tight, and I'm going to use the window and I'm going to twist the window. This is going to create more of a uniform twist around here. And then I'm going to take the base of my needle tool and just make sure that it's even around the window there, my little loop. And then I'm going to take one of each side of the wire and feed it through each window frame again, turn it over, and now I'm going to twist these 2 wires together. And it doesn't matter if they're uniform on this side, so I'm just going to twist these through. Now, the wire is going to be slightly uneven here, so I'm going to take my scissors and just cut it to where it's even after I twist this all together. And just take this and snip it off here. Now my wire's even, and I'm just going to take this wire and I'm going to wrap it around the window frame. And you're going to take your 7 inches of green wire and do this again to the other window frame. And I chose not to show you both of them just to save time, but that's how I did those. Now it's time to make a little snake out of my copper brown clay, and again you can use any brown clay you like. I just happen to have this left over, so I decided to use this instead of breaking open a new package of brown clay. And I'm just making a snake here, and like you see on this first window just above my hand, all I did was make it just long enough to where it can hang down the corners of my little window frame. And now I'm just going to take this little snake and wrap it around the wire area. Make this just a little bit longer to hang off the edges of the corner of the window frame here. And I'm just going to set this down, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute. Right now I'm going to take my little toothpick and I'm going to take these 4 little balls that I made, and they're just little tiny oval balls, probably just a teeny bit amount, probably the amount of that covers a fingernail. And I'm going to take my cuticle scissors and I'm going to snip around in circles. Now these are so small, I'll probably be able to snip around 3 to 4 times. And just take this and start at the top, snip, snip next to that one, turn it around, snip, and snip. That was 4. And then off kilter just a little bit. Don't snip right underneath. Snip in between the others. Just like this. Snip. 2, 3, 4, and go down in between the others and snip, snip, and snip. I only can do about 3 there and just finish it off at the bottom. And now I have 1 pine cone, and I'm going to do this 3 more times. I stick it on the toothpick to hold it for me, just to make it a little bit easier, but sometimes they fall off, so I'll just hold it in my finger, between my fingertips. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And I got my second pine cone done. As you can see, making pine cones is incredibly easy. You don't have to stick a toothpick in there. I'm just showing that if you don't want to hold on to it, you can do it like this. As you can see, mine fell off here, so I'm just going to use my fingertips. And my final pine cone here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. There we go. Cute little pine cone. Now I'm going to work on making a bunch of little tree bristles, Christmas tree bristles. So I'm going to make quite a bit of these little tiny bristles, kind of self-explanatory. Here's a whole bunch of them. Now that we're back to our window frame, I'm going to use my Sculpey clear or translucent, and I'm going to just put it onto my tile, and I'm going to take my fingertips and I'm going to rub the Sculpey translucent all over this little branch that I have on my window frame. This is going to help strengthen it as well as help it stick to the frame. And after I'm done doing this, I'm going to put this on a tile and I'm going to bake it for about 15 to 20 minutes. I believe I baked it exactly for 20 minutes on 275 in my oven. Baking it first will make sure that you won't move your branch around, because I find if you don't do this first that you could smush your branch or it'll break off while you're putting your bristles on. So go ahead. I would advise putting your Sculpey clear liquid on there before you do the bristles. That way, while you're doing the bristles, that way it could bake, and that'll be done by the time your bristles are done. So now these have been in the oven for 20 minutes, and I'm going to take some more liquid clay and I'm going to rub this on here all over the branch part. And this will help my little bristles adhere. I'm just going to stack these starting at the tip of the branch, and I'm just going to stack them along. There's no right or wrong way to do this. If you look at a tree branch, the bristles can be, depending on the type of tree, in a certain direction or flared out. It just depends on how you want your branches to look. And I'm using my toothpick just to kind of smush the clay down a little bit more into those little crevices. And now we're done with that part. Now we're going to take our pine cones that we had made, and we're going to cut them in half. So we have 4 pine cones once we cut these in half. And we're going to take our liquid Sculpey. I'm just using my toothpick to kind of aim where I want the clay, and take your pine cones and add them to the bottom of your branches. Now you can put your pine cones anywhere you like. This is just where I prefer to put mine. Take a little bit of liquid clay and stick another one on. I do not like to make things very symmetrical. I like asymmetry, so I'm going to put my pine cones where they're not exactly even, of course. So now I'm going to do the same exact thing to the other window frame. On the other branch, I'm going to start stacking the little pine needles on here. And I'm speeding through this so that I do not bore you. But this part probably takes the longest out of everything. My liquid Sculpey, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to cut my pine cones in half so I have 4 pine cones, and I'm going to put them in roughly the same spot that I did on the other window, just so that when you're wearing the earrings that they still look beautifully matching. And my pine needles are kind of stuck together here, so I'm using my toothpick to separate them a little bit. Now to make our bird. First, I want you to watch and see how I make this. I just take one little circle of clay, the biggest circle, and I pinch it down and push it down and then pinch the end to make the tail and the body. I add the other circle for the head and then blend the head into the body. Then I take the teeniest little piece of clay and I make the beak, and the final mid-sized piece of clay I make the wing. Use your little toothpick to make some indentations and make some little feather markings and the beak mouth, and that's it. So now I'm going to slow down a little bit. Again, the biggest piece of clay is about the size of my pinky, and I just pinch that off. Almost looks like a tadpole. And I bring it to a point at the end because that's where the tail is. So this is the body and this is the head. Just push down and blend into the body. So that's just 2 little bits of clay right here. Now I'm going to take the teeniest piece of clay and make a teeny tiny little beak. Now if this piece is too big, your beak is going to be huge and you don't want a big beak. Now I'm going to take that last little tiny bit of clay, not too much, and I'm going to compare it to the other bird. This is the wing, and I just want the wing to kind of match in size for both birds. And add that on there, and again I'm going to use my toothpick to make the tail lines and the wing lines and little tiny feather markings for the body. See how easy that is? 3 little pinches with my toothpick and I have beautiful feather lines. And here's just some little tiny details to make it look like feathers. And don't worry about an eye right now. And voila! 2 simple, really simple red birds that we're going to turn into cardinals. Add clay to the bottom of your window frame. Now, later on I'll show you, but I add the birds and I need to push them up a little bit more, but you'll see that once I'm done here. I'm going to take little bits of red clay and make tiny little balls for little hollies, little holly berries. And you just kind of randomly add these to wherever you want, but make sure you add a little bit of liquid clay to kind of help adhere the little berries to your little tree branches here. And you can use the berries to cover up any holes as well that may be showing through. And now I'm going to take my black clay, and this is really easy. I'm going to cover the beak and just make the line go a little bit towards where the eye would go. And now our little red birds look like cardinals. This is really easy. Now once I add the black, I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to add a little bit of red paint, and this is a metallic red paint that I'm using, and just a little red paint to the beak. Once it's dry, add your red. And I'm adding a little bit of red to the tail and the feathers on the wings as well. Now after the paint is completely dry, I'm going to put these in the oven for 45 minutes at 275 because I'm using Primo clay. And I push these birds up just a little bit because I want them to look like they're sitting on the window frame. Now this part is where I'm going to, you do not have to do this part, but this makes it look adorable. Take some tape and just to the half of the window. Do not do both sides. This is going to make it easier. And add tape to the back of the frame and make sure it is secure on there. And do that to both window frames, just half of each. Now you can use any UV resin that you like for this part. You can pour the resin in. I'm going to use some Tiny Pandora Deep Shine Paint On UV resin because this is what I have right now. Now normally you use this type of UV resin just very sparingly. You only use a very little amount and paint it very thin, but you're going to see here that I kind of go a little heavy-handed with it, and it doesn't matter because the bubbles actually make the window look like glass. So I'm going to use my UV paint, and I want to carefully put the paint or the UV resin into the corner of the windows. Now if you miss a corner, you'll notice that there's no UV resin there, and it'll just look like a part of the window is broken, and you can just add in some UV resin over that later to fill in the hole. But first I'm going to do, this is the step. First you fill in the 2 frames on one window, put it into cure for about 2 minutes, and do the other earring while you're waiting for that to cure. So I'm just going to paint these 2 little frames right here while my UV resin is curing on the other frame. Now I'm adding a little bit of the resin as well to the beak just to kind of make the beak a little bit shiny, but I'm trying to avoid adding any resin to any other parts. And if you get any resin on the wood frame, you can just wipe it away, but if you do get some on there, don't worry about it. After the UV resin has cured one time, then you add some more resin and just add a little bit of shiny glitter just to the outside edges of the window frame. Do not add any glitter to the middle of it. I want to give the effect that the snow is gathered or the frost is gathered around the edges of the window, kind of how it does in real life, to where you can see through the middle of the window and then it's shiny and glossy and pretty and frosted around the edges. So after you do this, you add your glitter and let that cure for 2 minutes. Pull out the other one that is just cured. Paint your resin in there or pour it in if you're using a different resin. And add your glitter just to the edges of your window frame so it's just frosted around the edges of your glass. And I do this with a toothpick. Now you can add more glitter to the window frames if you want, but I only added glitter once and then I realized I missed a couple of spots here, so I added a little bit more. Now once I've added the glitter, I add 3 more coats of resin because this is a paint on resin. If you are doing a pour in UV resin, you won't need to do as many coats, but make sure that you do, if you're using this paint on UV resin, make sure you do at least 4 coats more on top of the glitter. You want your UV resin to actually be thick compared to when you're painting it on and adding more coats on top of a piece of jewelry. You want your UV resin to be thick so that when you're pulling away the tape ever so slowly and gently, make sure that you don't pull your UV resin out of the window frames because it can pop out. And I'm pulling the tape completely flat on back to itself. You don't want to pull it straight out because it will pull your UV resin out. And just do this nice and slowly. If it does pull it out, add more tape and then go back and repeat the process again. So those are done, and now I'm going to remove the tape from this side. And this is why I only do 2 window frames at a time. I don't do all 4 pieces or all 4 squares at the same time, because if you mess one up, it's easy to go back and do it, but if you have the tape pulling out on 4 frames at the same time, it makes it really easy to pull them all out. Now you'll notice that this is very frosted. You can't really see through this because the tape has created kind of a gunky look. It looks like ice or like a block of ice, but you just add a little bit of UV resin to the back now. This is actually going to help secure the resin inside the window, because here is where you can add resin and it touch the edges of the frame onto the wood. And this will clear up any fogginess in your resin and make it look like glass. Now, don't those look wonderful? Now I'm going to repeat the process again for the other side and put the tape on half. Now it's going to be a little bit tricky because I'm not going to be able to get my resin, because I'm using a paint-on resin, behind the cardinal. So the window, when I'm all done, it's going to look like a broken window behind the cardinal, which is kind of cool. But I'm going to add a little bit of resin on the back of that after I'm done, just to kind of secure that and make sure it's thick and not going to break actually. So I'm just going to kind of try and get my resin in as far as I can. I am being liberal with this, and it is thicker than I would ever use this particular resin, but it doesn't matter because the little bubbles really give it a winter window effect. It just looks really pretty. Now again, I put resin on once, let it cure. The second time I will add resin, and I add glitter to the edge of the window frame, just like I did on the other side. And then I add 3 coats. Even 4 would be better for this paint-on resin to make it thicker. And there's the little broken area you see behind the bird. So I'm just going to add a little bit of resin. And you can see how one side you can see through and the other side you can't. Once you paint resin on the back side, it will clear that window up. So I'm going to paint the back side and cure it, and do the same thing to the other window. And that will clear up the fogginess, so you can see through better. But again, if you're using pour-in resin, you won't have to do as many layers as I'm doing with this paint-on UV resin. And I'm going to use French hook earrings, or findings, and I'm going to make these a pair of cute little window earrings. So I'm just going to bend this sideways and open the loop, put it around the wire that I already have here, and voila. There's no need to do anything else. I don't have to seal anything in. I'm not worried about anything. And I have an adorable see-through glass-like window frames with cardinals, perfect for any winter outfit. I hope you will head on over to a Grateful Studio on Facebook and post your very own pictures of your window frames that you've made. This has been another A Grateful Studio tutorial. I hope you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.